Hello and welcome back. We're going to be doing some network configurations by adding some Ubiquiti hardware to the server rack, and we're also going to remove the Linksys router. Well, we're probably not going to remove the Linksys router and use it as an access point later on, but for all purposes, we're going to remove that router, we're going to remove the unmanaged Netgear switch that's in there, and we're going to add a PoE camera to the network, as well as some other stuff. So actually, that's a good point. I finally got this in. There was actually some packaging problems. The USG actually said it was shipped here, but it didn't arrive. Not really sure what's up with that, but I ended up getting a replacement anyway. So we are good to go there, because as you can tell, it's actually here. And inside of here is this beautiful switch. And the Ubiquity Switch itself. So I did go with the 16-port one mainly because it was rack mountable. I really wanted to get the rack mountable USG Pro, but I couldn't really justify the extra money for it because there's no real differences software-wise. And I probably actually will use a lot of ports on these, especially when I get more cameras down the road. Probably have like maybe 5 to 8 of these suckers around the house. So I'll need at least 5 to 8 ports, of course. The USG Pro, not quite so important to have many ports because I only have one connection coming from my ISP. So I'll get one of these ports, and I guess technically I have a VoIP port which can be reconfigured to a LAN port if I need it. But I probably won't even end up using that anyway. Or I don't know, I might keep my old switch. Who knows? So I guess before we go too much further, let's just go ahead and open these up. Not really do like an unboxing by any means, but just to kind of see what's inside and what you could expect to get if you were to buy these yourselves. So one thing I like about these is they're actually not wrapped in plastic at all, so that's very friendly for our planet if you're into recycling and stuff like I am. But this is the USG. As you can see, it's got 4 ports on the front. You got a console port for managing the USG, WAN port for where your internet comes in, LAN 1, and interestingly enough, a WAN 2 and LAN 2 port there as well. When on the box, it clearly says VoIP, so they must have gone away from having a reconfigurable VoIP port to now having a WAN 2 and LAN 2 port. On the rear, you have a 12-volt DC connection, and to power this sucker, they include a power brick as well as a pretty nice power cord. And that's really about it. There seems to be some mounting hardware if you want to stick this on the wall. But for our purposes, we're just going to stick this on the rack. Alright, so we're just going to stuff all this back in here all willy-nilly because I don't need it right now. Move that to the side. So next up is the Ubiquity Camera. So this thing is actually surprisingly heavy. It looks like it's all plastic from the exterior, but actually opening it up reveals an all plastic camera that has some pretty good weight to it. So the camera itself is all white. It's got a flexible arm between where the lens is and also where the rear mounting point is to the wall. The cable actually goes in through the hole in the back, and deep down inside of there is where you would actually insert your cable and plug it into the camera itself. And this is a PoE camera. It runs off 12 volts or 0.5 amps. Supposedly somewhere in there it also will use 12 volts that I've seen on the internet, but clearly labeled on the camera itself is 24 volts. Also included with this camera is again a power cord, which you'll probably need if you don't have a PoE switch, and then also a PoE Ethernet adapter. So you would actually plug this into the wall so you can get PoE to your camera, and then on the other side is a LAN port, so you would plug this into your switch so you could get video feed to your server. There's also some wall mounting brackets in here, and that's actually all that's included with this box. Oh, actually, and also this is a pole mount. So you would essentially stick this on the back of there, and then you could somehow loop it or attach it to a pole. I'm not going to even use this. but it's there for anyone that might need to know that. All right, and finally, the last thing on the list is the Ubiquity Switch itself. So this is the 16-port 150 watt version. So this thing is going to use a hell of a lot of power. Well, maybe actually, I don't know if it'll use a lot of power, but we'll find out once we get it spinning. All right, and this has got a beautiful finish on it. It comes with mounting brackets, which we are definitely going to need. Some 3M feet if you want to put that down on top of something like a shelf, or maybe, well, I guess a shelf, or against the wall. Comes with mounting screws, which is always nice to see. I'm not sure what gauge they are, or whatever you call them, what M series. They are not labeled. And then, of course, wow, this is actually much lighter than I thought it would be. The switch itself. And so along the front, you have 2 SFP plus ports, and then 16 1 gigabit E ports. And by the way, those SFP plus ports are 1 gigabit ports. And then on the far left, you have the power LED, which is currently powered off. And then on the rear, on the left, you also have your console port and power on the far right. This is a very nice looking switch. I'm actually really glad I got the 16 port one and not the 8 port and or 6 port, I believe, or maybe 4 port that they have, because I wouldn't have been able to rack mount it, and it just would have looked out of place, I guess, on the network switch itself. And lastly, things that are also included in the box are a power cord, of course, and some more screws. I'm not really quite sure what those screws are for. Oh, yes, I am. They are actually for mounts, the mounting brackets that you would mount this thing to. All right, so now that we know exactly what we're going to be putting on the rack, now we have to figure out where everything is going to go. So I'm thinking about potentially mounting the switch all the way across here, probably putting the modem on the rear side, so that way I don't really have to move anything around. Although I would like to possibly drop these down all the way towards the bottom to be flush with the gaming computer, so that way the servers just sit right up top. However, I'm a little reluctant to do that because the vents of the gaming computer are actually right here, so that's where all of the heat gets exhausted from, and if this is sitting right on top of that, it may have a tougher time expelling a lot of the heat that's built up from the CPU and the graphics card. Okay, so now that we have the dashboard installed, we're going to go ahead, or I'm sorry, the Ubiquity controller, not dashboard. We're going to go ahead and install some new firmware on the USG, and then also all of our other devices. So there's not really much left from here to do, I hope. We just need to plug it in the network and hope that my current network doesn't jack up the way any of this stuff is supposed to be installed. I've never done this before, so we're going to kind of wing this part and see how it goes. It should be pretty simple based off some of the things I've seen online. But let's find out. So I've got a couple ports available on my current switch. So we're just going to plug it into one of these ports. Doesn't matter really which one. And then go ahead and plug the, I think it's the WAN port of the USG. Alright, so now we're just going to get this thing some power, and instead of doing the smart thing and plugging it into my rack mount, one of the mini batteries and or power strip, I'm actually just going to plug it into the wall, because there's no better way to break brand new equipment than by plugging it into the wall, I suppose. And there we go. And I'm actually going to change this to the LAN port. Look at the instructions, but it doesn't actually specify which one to plug it into. Or it probably does, I just can't read. So now we got to find some way to actually find this thing on the network. It doesn't seem to be discovering quite yet. And it's probably because I'm not plugging in the right port. The instructions don't specify which port to plug it into. So I'm just kind of guessing here of what needs to be done. After failing to configure the USG via my Unify controller, I ended up having to interface with the USG via command line through my MacBook Pro. Luckily for me, I could SSH into it relatively easily, make the changes that I needed specifically to the subnets, and it was off to the races after that. But that's when I came to the realization that I didn't want to use the Unify controller on my Mac OS. I actually wanted to be on a virtual machine that I could pretty much hit from anywhere in the network, locally of course, and that's when I decided to use Ubuntu OS. So I installed the Unify controller on there, got everything working, adopted as I had to, and I was pretty much good to go and satisfied. But then that's about when I decided I should use Ubuntu Server instead. So I followed a couple command line scripts from the Ubiquiti forums, everything installed perfectly fine, and it was off to the races from there. Okay, so finally after all of that mess, we have the USG configured, the Linksys router configured as an access point, and all that's really left to do is configure the switch, but I don't have to do that right now. Actually, maybe I will do that first. I don't know, to be determined. But now we just gotta figure out where everything is gonna go. So I'm thinking the switch might go here. No, that's not gonna work. Alright, so maybe we'll move this power supply all the way towards the bottom. This is too complicated. Alright, so I've decided against removing the cyber power ups and moving it down more. I'm instead just going to go ahead and remove this top shelf unit with the switch and everything on it. So, I'm just going to unplug all of these and remove the switch, I think. Alright. And move this out of the way. Or not. And remove the shelf. Alright. Put that to the side. Grab the switch. So this should slide right on in. Perfect. And then remount all of this junk. Now time to find a home for the modem and USG. Okay, so I actually did decide just now that I am going to move the ups. I'm not really sure where at the moment, but I really don't like the cables coming off to the side and going into the switch. I really like it the original way, which was the switch was basically below the modem and the switch, the old switch, and the router was also on the back. So everything was like kind of nicely organized in the same place. So we're going to do that again. And I'm probably going to... Oh wait, the servers have their own power, so I'm probably just going to rip this out and get it out of the way. So I'm just going to rip everything out. I'm not even sure what's plugged in anymore at this point as I break things. But it's all got to go, or at least get out of the way for now. Alright, so slide this. Dang it. Everything is plugged in. I literally have to remove all these cables to get this thing out. Alright, well let's get to work. Well, just gonna spend a little bit of time ruining all this cable management that I had. I've already undone a lot. I figured you guys might be a little interested in seeing it actually go down. And the UPS has lost power officially. Normally you hear it beep, but I actually have it muted for once in my life. I actually like the beeping. Alright. So many cable ties, or zip, or whatever Velcro things. Okay, remember when I said I didn't want the UPS that was here on the bottom? Well, it's going on the bottom. It's just, I'm really not in the mood to do a lot of work to redo this entire rack. So instead, I'm going to go with my original plan, and the rack will go all the way on the or underneath the servers and just above the other UPS and just above the gaming computer or the truncator. So right now, literally just putting in some more mounting thingies so I can put the shelf back on here. Or, yeah, so I put the shelf back on here, but I'm actually going to move the switch down one more space, and the shelf will go right back where it was prior to mounting this. So I literally just did not all that work per se, but a little bit of extra work for no reason. And that thing is, oh sweet, I thought I was gonna lose that forever. Now this way I don't have to shut down the servers. I can be a little bit lazy about it, which is gonna be nice. I know, who doesn't like being lazy, right? But at the same time, oh snap, I think I just, oh god. But at the same time, I get to keep my original layout, which I really liked. You know, it made sense. So you had the modem on top, then you had the router, and then you had the switch, and then you had all the clients. To me, that layout made sense, and that's originally why I went with it. But that's okay. We'll just go with this instead, which will be just as good. All right, so switch is in. All right, so the switch is in place, and now we're gonna put the shelf back where it originally went and remount it. I don't actually need 4 screws or any screws at all because, you know, the switch can hold it up. But honestly, I kind of like having it mounted. Gives me a nice warm fuzzy feeling knowing that everything is in there most correct and I don't have to worry about things sliding around. Although the USG and the modem itself won't be mounted to anything. They'll just be kind of sitting here and staying still at their own weight. But it still should look pretty cool when all said and done. So let's actually take a quick look at that, what we can expect to see. All right, so we're looking directly at the front of the server rack. The USG will more than likely sit somewhere right about here, like so. And the router, and the modem will go something like this. Probably just like that, and the cables will snake through just like they did before into each one of these slots. Or maybe everything will be offset. I'm going to leave a little bit of space because this USG gets really hot. And I don't really like the fact that it does. I might actually do something like this. I think that'll look good. Maybe this should be this way, actually. I'm not sure if it really matters, but something about the words being this way kind of makes a little bit more sense. So I guess we will do something like that. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but if you don't have one of these tools for your rack at home or at work, you have to get it. It makes life a hell of a lot easier for removing these mounts or these screws, whatever you want to call them, and also installing them. I mean, look how fast this is. It's ridiculous. Okay, maybe not that fast because I'm kind of messing it up here. Boom. Installed. Alright, that one was a little snug, probably because the one above it. Look at that. I didn't even have to think about it, just did it. Alright, so last piece to go back in place is the ups. And we're just going to string that back there somewhere kind of generically. Doesn't really matter. I'll pull that through later. Now this thing's actually pretty heavy, so I'm surprised that it doesn't need any additional support like rails or anything, and that the mounting brackets actually support it pretty well. Really nice to see. And it takes a little bit of load off the mind. Oh, that doesn't fit for some reason. And I bet that's because the gaming computer's in the way. And I just turned that on, so I'm going to power that off real quick. No need for it to be on. And we're going to slide this in. And eventually screw it in. Oh, it's... If this is how you break things when you don't have anyone to help you install anything. Oh man, I just knocked out one of the thingies. Alright, so we'll cut that part out of the video. And we'll just pretend like we got that mounted. Okay, and almost after forgetting to hit play, I did actually square myself away and get this reinstalled without any more hiccups or banging of the electronics. there's no telling how many things I just destroyed and how many bad writes on all my hard drives I just caused with all the banging, but it's installed and we can now move forward with hooking everything else up. It's been a lot of work. So I really wanted to show you guys that there's no more clearance here at all. The battery sits directly on top of the truncator, which actually didn't fit earlier. And the only way I made it fit was by removing the rubber feet that come with the Corsair H240. So these are the front two that I removed. The back two are removed as well. And so now it fits perfectly here with no space at all. In fact, the ups is actually kind of resting on the Corsair case itself towards the back. But it's actually perfect. I didn't think I could get it to fit. But I should probably just get this rack mounted in the future. But that remains to be seen. Alright, now that everything is remounted and racked where it's supposed to be, now comes the impossibly hard task of reconnecting all the cables and doing the cable management. Which, unfortunately, I'm going to spare for you guys because moving the camera every time I need to change directions or angles to manage the cables is going to be quite a pain in the rear end. So I'm not going to do that as much as I like being rear-ended. I mean, things being painful in the rear end. Wait, that didn't come out right either. Let's just let it go for right now. And we're done. So this is the final product. We got the oh so sweet networking across the entire house. As you may notice, there's actually, or you may not be able to notice, there's actually less cables because I have gotten rid of IPMI or BMC, whatever you want to call it. Remote management ports are now gone. I have 4 free ports for cameras if I so choose. One of which will be occupied here shortly. And of course the servers themselves, which really haven't changed configuration. And the ups at the very bottom here, beautifully displaying absolutely nothing. Okay, there we go. About 61 minutes of runtime with just the network equipment, which is pretty darn good. So I should have internet for a long time. Now we just have one more thing on our list to do, and that is get the Ubiquity camera up and running and the switch configured, which is actually 2 things, not 1 thing. Whatever. The Ubiquity G3 camera is finally set up and recording the parking lot area outside. Eventually I will set it up to record where my car is and maybe a little bit other areas, or at least where the entranceway is to the apartment itself. But as you can see, the quality is actually pretty good. The cars that you see on the camera right now are very far away. So it's a little hard to tell what license plates are out there and also what faces there may or may not be. But had it been pointed a little bit closer to where the entrance of the apartment is or where my car actually is, I'm pretty confident you would see faces pretty well, and you would also be able to distinguish license plate given the opportunity, especially with the lighting in the apartment complex. Alright, so everything's set up as it should be, at least it is for now. The camera's working, the switch is working, the USG router is working, my Linksys access point is working. So on that note, I just want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.